During the Cold War, paranoia became an art form. Nations on both sides of the Iron Curtain poured endless resources into weapons, spies, and secrets that pushed the limits of human imagination. The United States and the Soviet Union lived in a world where every shadow hid an enemy, and every silence concealed a listening ear. To maintain an edge, intelligence agencies sought methods that were not only effective, but unpredictable. It was an era when science, creativity, and desperation combined in strange and often disturbing ways. Out of this crucible of fear and innovation came one of the most bizarre projects in the history of espionage, Operation Acoustic Kitty. The idea seemed absurd on the surface. Could a common house cat, the familiar companion of countless living rooms, be transformed into a spy? To some within the CIA, the answer was yes. Unlike trained agents, a cat could wander freely without arousing suspicion. It could slip past guards, climb walls, and sit unnoticed near conversations that no microphone could otherwise reach. In theory, it was perfect, inconspicuous, agile, and utterly underestimated. If the plan worked, it would give American intelligence access to Soviet secrets in ways that no gadget or agent could achieve. Behind the high walls of CIA laboratories, technicians and surgeons set to work. Their mission was to merge animal and machine, turning a living creature into a tool of surveillance. The project would implant miniature microphones within the body of a cat, thread antennas along its fur, and hide transmitters within its frame. To those who designed it, this was not cruelty, but ingenuity, a radical step forward in the chess game of espionage. In the logic of the Cold War, even a pet could become a weapon. But the concept itself revealed something deeper about the times. The CIA, driven by the fear of falling behind its Soviet rival, was willing to chase ideas that bordered on science fiction. Paranoia erased boundaries, and imagination was harnessed not for art or medicine, but for secrecy and control. Operation Acoustic Kitty became a reflection of that era, bold, bizarre, and emblematic of a world where nothing was too strange if it promised even the smallest advantage. Today, the story of Acoustic Kitty reads like satire, a parody of spycraft. Yet at its core, it is deadly serious. It illustrates the lengths to which intelligence agencies would go, the creativity born of desperation, and the unsettling reality that in the Cold War, truth was often stranger than fiction. To understand the project is to glimpse the mindset of an age where fear drove innovation and where the line between genius and folly disappeared in the fog of espionage. The 1960s were years of audacity for the CIA. Behind closed doors, the agency explored frontiers that blurred the line between science and fiction. Satellites orbited the Earth. Nuclear arsenals multiplied, and espionage became as much about imagination as it was about information. Within this feverish climate of Cold War rivalry, the CIA embarked on countless secret programs, some brilliant, others reckless, and many that remain classified to this day. Among these projects was one so unusual, so implausible, that it continues to astonish decades later: Operation Acoustic Kitty. The concept was born from the marriage of paranoia and technology. CIA scientists theorized that a cat, small and unobtrusive, could serve as the ultimate surveillance device. While microphones and wiretaps were limited by walls and guards, a cat could move freely through public and private spaces. Nobody would question a stray animal lounging near a bench, climbing onto a wall, or curling up by a window. If the animal carried a transmitter hidden inside its body, then every whispered conversation nearby could become American intelligence. The man often credited with spearheading the idea was a CIA officer deeply involved in technical operations. Inspired by advances in miniaturized electronics, he proposed embedding microphones, batteries, and antennas directly inside a cat. Veterinary surgeons were brought into the fold, tasked with performing delicate operations to merge flesh and circuitry. The project received funding, and a small team of scientists began transforming a living creature into a tool of espionage. To justify the program, officials argued that it was not only ingenious, but necessary. The Soviet Union was relentless in guarding its secrets. Embassies and government compounds were hardened against traditional surveillance. Human spies were at risk of exposure, imprisonment, or worse. But who would notice a cat? The animal could slip through fences, wander into courtyards, and linger near diplomats. In theory, it was perfect camouflage, innocence hiding intent. Inside CIA laboratories, prototypes began to take shape. Engineers struggled with the limitations of technology. How to fit a working microphone inside an ear canal, how to hide an antenna inside fur, how to power the system without weighing down the animal. Each problem required experimentation, adjustment, and secrecy. From the outside, the work seemed absurd, but to those within the project, it was a serious mission with potentially revolutionary consequences. Thus, Operation Acoustic Kitty moved from idea to reality. It was not a joke, not a rumor, but a funded Cold War initiative carried out in the name of national security. It reflected the mindset of the time, an era where the boundaries of espionage expanded into strange, sometimes unsettling territory. This was not only about spying on enemies, it was about redefining what was possible, no matter how unconventional the means. When the project moved from paper to reality, Operation Acoustic Kitty entered its most unsettling phase. What had been diagrams and proposals became surgery tables and living subjects. Inside a guarded CIA facility, veterinary surgeons performed delicate operations on cats, attempting to merge biology with technology in ways never before attempted. A tiny microphone was implanted in the ear canal. A small transmitter was inserted near the base of the skull. An antenna, thin and flexible, was woven along the spine and tail. Each procedure transformed an ordinary cat into something else. Part animal, part instrument of espionage. The scale of the operation revealed both the ingenuity and desperation of the agency. Engineers worked to miniaturize components that were crude by modern standards. Batteries had to be small enough to fit within the cat's body, but powerful enough to transmit sound across short distances. Microphones had to capture whispers without distortion. Antennas had to remain invisible, hidden in fur and bone. Every adjustment required experimentation, and every attempt brought new risks. The line between science and cruelty blurred in the pursuit of secrecy. Once the prototypes were complete, the next challenge was behavior. A cat, unlike a machine, does not follow orders easily. Trainers attempted to condition the animals, guiding them toward targets with food and subtle cues. The idea was simple on paper. Release the cat near a Soviet diplomat. Let it wander naturally to a bench or a wall, and allow the hidden technology to capture conversations. In practice, it was chaos. Cats were distracted by noises, movement, or their own instincts. No matter how advanced the implants, controlling a living creature proved more difficult than any circuit. Yet within the CIA, the project pressed forward. Reports described hours of testing, with engineers monitoring faint transmissions through static-filled receivers. Every time a cat meowed, scratched, or shifted, data was recorded. Each test was logged as progress, even when the results were unreliable. In the world of intelligence, hope often outweighed evidence. To some within the agency, Acoustic Kitty represented the future, a world where even nature itself could be weaponized. To others, it already felt like folly. The experiment stage of Operation Acoustic Kitty remains one of the strangest chapters in the history of espionage. It was a reflection of Cold War paranoia taken to its extreme, where imagination overpowered practicality and desperation blurred the boundaries of reason. In the pursuit of secrets, the CIA had turned to cats not as companions, but as instruments. The irony was haunting. A creature once associated with mystery had been forced into a darker mystery, the story of how far nations will go when fear becomes their guide. At last, after months of preparation, the CIA decided to move beyond the laboratory. The prototype cat, fitted with hidden devices, was deemed ready for its first field trial. The target: Soviet officials in Washington, D.C. The plan was simple in theory. The cat would be released near a park bench where diplomats often gathered, its concealed microphone capturing conversations as it innocently lingered nearby. For the agency, this test was the culmination of years of funding, surgery, and training. For the cat, it was a mission it never chose. The moment arrived on a quiet afternoon. A CIA van parked discreetly near the site, agents inside monitoring their equipment with tense anticipation. Outside, the city moved with its usual rhythm. Pedestrians walking, traffic humming, birds scattered in the trees. Within the van, the technicians gave the signal. A handler opened the carrier and gently placed the cat on the ground. For a brief instant, hope flickered. The cat looked around, ears twitching, body poised to move toward the unsuspecting Soviets. But reality proved crueler than imagination. As soon as the animal stepped into the street, a passing taxi struck it, killing the prototype instantly. The carefully constructed device, the months of training, the millions of dollars spent, all were undone in an instant by the chaos of ordinary life. The CIA team sat stunned. What was meant to be a triumph of ingenuity ended as a tragic reminder of the unpredictability of living creatures. Accounts of the incident vary. Some suggest that the cat survived longer, completing a partial mission before collapsing. Others claim that the accident was exaggerated, later retold as dark humor within intelligence circles. What remains consistent is the conclusion: Operation Acoustic Kitty could not overcome the stubborn independence of its subject. Cats could not be programmed. They were not machines to be controlled. The very nature that made them ideal for espionage, their freedom, their unpredictability, was the same nature that doomed the project. In the aftermath, the agency reassessed its priorities. For all its absurdity, the project revealed a profound truth about the Cold War. Paranoia had driven intelligence agencies to chase possibilities that defied reason. The result was not only wasted resources, but also a haunting ethical dilemma. How far should science go in the name of security? Operation Acoustic Kitty failed not just as a program, but as a symbol of the desperation and eccentricity that defined an era of shadows. The failure of Operation Acoustic Kitty did not merely close the chapter on an unusual experiment. It revealed something profound about the psychology of the Cold War and the lengths to which intelligence agencies were willing to go. At its heart, the project was less about espionage and more about desperation, an era defined by fear of falling behind. In the frantic race between superpowers, imagination had become both weapon and weakness. A cat turned into a listening device may sound absurd, but it symbolized a mindset where no idea was too strange if it promised even the slightest advantage. For years, details of the program remained classified. Within the CIA, the story of Acoustic Kitty was sometimes repeated in hushed tones, sometimes as dark humor, sometimes as a cautionary tale. Officially, it was written off as impractical, yet even in its failure, the project served as a reminder of the risks of unchecked creativity under the pressure of secrecy. Millions of dollars had been invested, lives of animals altered, and nothing of value obtained. Still, the effort reflected the climate of its time, a world so consumed by paranoia that it blurred the line between genius and folly. When the program was eventually declassified and revealed to the public, it was greeted with disbelief. To many, it sounded like satire, the kind of absurd plot one might find in a spy novel or a Hollywood comedy, but documents and testimonies confirmed it was real. The CIA had truly tried to turn a cat into a spy. The revelation sparked debates not only about wasted resources, but also about the ethics of experimenting on animals in the name of national security. For historians, Acoustic Kitty became a curious footnote, both tragic and absurd, in the long history of intelligence work. Yet beneath the humor lies a sobering lesson. The Cold War was not just a contest of bombs and borders. It was a contest of imagination, where fear of the unknown drove agencies to pursue extremes. Projects like Acoustic Kitty show that paranoia can produce innovation, but also absurdity. They remind us that secrecy often breeds eccentricity, that pressure can push institutions toward paths that seem unimaginable in calmer times. And they raise an uncomfortable question. How many other projects, equally bizarre or disturbing, remain hidden in the classified shadows of history? Today, Operation Acoustic Kitty is remembered less for what it achieved and more for what it represented. It is a story of ambition without grounding, of science twisted by desperation, of a world where even innocence could be turned into a weapon. Its legacy is not one of success, but of reflection. To study it is to understand how fear shapes decision-making, how secrecy encourages excess, and how even the most powerful nations can stumble into folly. In the end, Acoustic Kitty stands as both a curiosity and a warning that in the pursuit of control, we must never lose sight of reason or of the humanity that keeps imagination in check.